Well, a good friend of mine was commenting to me the other day on my improvisation platform, Groovz Playground. And I was asking him what he thought of it, and I asked about what he thought of my short improvisations that I recently recorded for each of the tracks. And he said he liked them very much. Now, I told him while I was recording them, one thing I was sensitive to was to avoid licks. And everybody has their go-to phrases and their runs, but I wanted these improvisations to be fresh and free of serial filler. And then he replied, "But I do hear your style of playing trombone." Now, I wasn't sure, and still am not, if that was a criticism, but it made me think. Because I do have a style of playing trombone that's unique, and that flavor will always be there, and I like that. My musical personality was not what I wanted to scrub from these improvisations. It was my muscle memory lick and patterns that, again, everybody has, but I didn't want them showing up in these improvisation examples. So the conversation I had with my friend inspired me to create this video so that I could talk about the idea of having one's unique musical voice in their improvisation. Because having a recognizable sound is a good thing for a player. You know, it signals that you are playing and not just anyone else. I'm reminded of something Dave Liebman and I spoke about a while back. He was telling me the story of being part of a Downbeat blindfold test, and they were listening to various sax players and seeing if they could identify who they were. And I'll let Dave tell the story.
Blindfold test, Downbeat. Obviously, for me, all soprano saxophone. So, the usual suspects, Lacey, Train, Wayne, Bradford, some of those, whatever. And they played, how blindfold was, that you identify it, you get 5 stars, et cetera, et cetera. But it was good because it did enable the musicians to talk about how they heard music. So, of course, he gets to the last one. He says, "Okay, I got one for you. It's kind of specialized." And it's Kenny G. Now, everybody knows. So I said, "Okay, we can pin the guy to the ground. We can do it. We can get negative about the brother and, whatever you want to say." But it took me only one note to know who he was. And I don't think I could say that about a lot of other musicians that immediately within the first bar. I mean, I'm exaggerating, of course, but very quickly who that is because, number one, you're familiar with it. Number two, that person has it imbued in them. They can't help it.
Now, as Dave said, we all love to hate on Kenny G, but you have to admit he has a very distinctive sound that's done very well for him. And this also relates to something Richie Beirach often said to me. He said, "Be careful of how much transcribing you do, because after a while you could be taking on the characteristics of the players you're transcribing." Now, you might say, "Wow, I'd love to sound like my musical idol." But is that jazz? Imitating someone else? Copying the higher, faster, louder of the greats is, in my opinion, what is turning jazz into a caricature of its original art form. Now back to Lieb. He struggled for a while with the fact that he was sounding like his idol, John Coltrane. And his solution, it was somewhat drastic, was to switch instruments. And since then, he's become a soprano sax player rather than a tenor player and has a very distinctive sound on soprano. Now, another great player that I've spoken to about this topic is Randy Brecker. In his youth, Randy started to sound like Woody Shaw because he was working hard on learning Woody's solo transcriptions. And the realization hit him when his brother Michael made the comment.
And when his book came out, maybe 3 or 4 years later, I just ate that book up and I was in heavy Woody mode, and I remember playing some stuff for my brother. And Mike turned around and said, "Well, man, truthfully, you sound like watered down Woody." So I started thinking, well, maybe he's right. Maybe I should just get away from this.
Now, my all-time favorite comment from this topic came from a conversation with the great singer Sheila Jordan. And in our interview, she was mentioning unique singers that she respected, like Blossom Dearie and Annie Ross. And I added her, while we were talking, to that list of very unique musical voices. And her response was,
well, I don't want to sound like, why would I want to sing like somebody else? I mean, that's stealing their life. I don't want to steal their life and what they've been living. I have my own life to sing about.
So my question to you is, who do you sound like? You or somebody else? Is your musical performance personality as distinct as your speaking voice, your face, your fingerprint? Can a listener pick you out of a blindfold test? And I think this is a question worth asking yourself. Now, you have to have a certain amount of instrumental proficiency in order to even have a distinctive musical voice. So this is obviously not an issue for someone who's just starting out or who hasn't yet developed their instrumental skills. But if you've been playing for a bunch of years and you have chops, listen to recordings of your playing. See if you can identify the unique characteristics of your sound and your musical approach that's distinct from others on your instrument. And to hear these short improvisations that I recorded in the play-along tracks in Groovz Playground that my friend was referring to, go to musicsavvy.com and sign up for the Groovz Playground course, because it's going to help strengthen your improvisation and get you closer to discovering who you really are musically through your improvisation.